Okay, so a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who has joined today or are watching this session recording. For those of you who have joined us for the first time, let me do a quick intro. So the Salesforce Marketer Group Singapore, which is a trailblazer community, is super excited to bring the Salesforce Marketing Cloud Bootcamp for all of you. What this bootcamp is. In this bootcamp, you get an opportunity to learn from industry experts. There's more than 65 plus sessions planned for this session, and which will cover all the various products in Marketing Cloud. Topics range from basic setup to advanced custom development. And yes, towards the end of the session, we have a small quiz session, and the online attendees for attending today get a chance to win prizes. And thank you to everyone who has joined us today and also the organizing committee. A few housekeeping rules. So during the session, if anybody has any question, request you to all the participants to be on mute, but feel free to use the chat box for any questions that you may have. Post the session if you have any question. Please, please use this link or you can scan this QR code, which will take you to a Google form wherein you can put in your questions. For all the session recordings, you can click on this link, which will take you to our YouTube channel where we have all the sessions recording available. Again, you can also scan this QR code. And for signing up for all the future sessions, you can click on this link. Go to this link basically or scan the QR code where you will find registration link for all the future sessions. So today, this is the episode 6 of this series, and the session is going to be conducted by Matt, and the title of the session is SFMC Infrastructure Setup, wherein we are going to talk about basic view setup, single org versus multiple org architecture. And here is the agenda, a bit of introductions, the main topics that are going to be covered today. And towards the end, we'll have a round of Q&A, and we'll also be sharing resources. And after the session, we'll have a small quiz. A quick shout out to our organizing team, Abhishek Nagar, who's an SFMC technical lead. Yours truly, Vishal Chavla. I'm a SFMC solution architect. Prashant Vardhan, who's a Salesforce technical lead, and Fanendra, who's also there on the call with us. He's a chief technology and evangelist. Yeah, that's an introduction slide. Cool. So I will now stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Matt. And Matt, you can take the session from here.
Okay, let me know whether you see the screen right now.
Yeah, we can see your screen, Matt.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, then we can start with today's session. Hello, everyone. Today we'll be talking about the architecture. As you could see from the previous slides, it will be quite a mix between the business units, Marketing Cloud Connect in terms of the single org versus multi-org, and a bit of deliverability. It might seem a bit all over the place, but I hope after the session you will see that those three things are quite connected to each other, and decision in each steps impacts the other decisions that are there. So my name is Mateusz Dąbrowski. I am the Marketing Cloud Architect at PwC, Salesforce MVP and Marketing Champion, and author at the mateuszdabrowski.pl website. And as I mentioned today, we have a few topics to cover. I split it into the six sections. First will be about the basics of the Marketing Cloud business units. Then we'll talk a bit about the business unit setup patterns, so how you can think about configuring your business units depending on the use case, depending on the structure that you need for your specific project. We'll talk about what is the difference between the single org and multi-org configuration of the Marketing Cloud in relation to the integration with the Salesforce CRM. We will see again some patterns related to what is possible, what is not possible, and how you can build a workarounds around the limitations of the single org and multi-org connectors. Then we'll jump into the basics of the SAP private domains IPs, so the technical features of the marketing cloud that are related to deliverability. And finally, we will focus strictly on the deliverability and IP warmup. In the end, as I mentioned on the chat, there will be a QA session. So as I mentioned on the chat, small questions related to a specific slide that I'm currently on, I will try to answer on the go. If there will be any bigger question or more complex one, let's keep it for this Q&A session to keep the flow of the presentation. So first point, business units. And as for the business units, let's start with the dictionary, because there is quite a lot of different names around this topic that are sometimes problematic because they are sometimes related to the history of the marketing cloud. So first thing, and already problematic one, is the tenant and enterprise. As for the tenant, it's the general name for either the main business unit in your account, so the parent, or for the whole your account. So all business units, your whole organization in the marketing cloud. And a bit similar case is with the enterprise. On one hand, in the past, it was used to name the specific license of the marketing cloud, because there was the agency, there was Enterprise 1.0, Enterprise 2.0. You can still see some of these historic names in the documentation. But right now, nearly every single marketing cloud is Enterprise 2.0. So you can just assume that your org is Enterprise 2.0, unless you have a very, very old marketing cloud or some kind of special case. So in most cases, the tenant or the enterprise will be related to your whole set of business units, your whole account on the marketing cloud. Next, we have the business units, which is the main topic of this part of the presentation. And business units are kind of specific sets of parts of your account. So while there's only one marketing cloud account, you can split it into specific business units. We'll be talking in a moment what it means in terms of the value, what is the reason for getting business units. But what is very important is that business units are just part of a single account. Those are not separate orgs. So if you are more from the Salesforce CRM side of things, having a separate orgs, Salesforce orgs, is something completely different, because orgs are separate. In case of the business units, those are just semi-separated parts of single marketing cloud account. Then next part is the parent and child. This is relatively simple. So the parent is the first top level business unit, the starting business unit. There are some specific rules around this parent business unit. It is a bit different from any other business unit in your account. And then every other business unit in your account is a child business unit. And you can have either direct childs, so just the business unit right under your parent, or you can have descendants. So you can have a child that has a child that has a child. It depends on how you will be setting up your marketing cloud configuration. Finally, the last term that I want to cover right now is the AID and MID. You can see it a lot in both the documentation, in the scripts, snippets that you will be seeing in the web, or even when you are creating a support ticket. Those are enterprise ID and member ID. So the enterprise ID is always in relation to the enterprise, so the parent business unit. So generally, if someone asks you about the ID, it's about the ID of the parent business unit, the main account ID, that you can see easily in the marketing cloud when you hover over the business unit pick list in the main menu, and there will be the name and the ID right next to it. MID is ID of any business unit, called here a member. So for example, you can have the MID of a child that is connected to ID of the parent. And in this way, you can know which specific part of your org, for example, has a problem that support needs to resolve, or to which specific business unit your script, your solution needs to connect. Once we have this part out of the box, we can focus on the purpose. So why even use business units in your projects? And there are quite a lot of reasons with some special mentions that are needed here. So one of the most obvious reasons to create business units, separate business units, is of course to separate subscribers. So let's say you have a company that wants to show the different brands separately, and does it want each of its brands to see the subscribers of another sub-brand. In this case, you can create a separate business unit for each brand, and it will be separating those subscribers. However, you can see that there is the asterisk in the end, and this is because there is not really a perfect separation possible. We'll be talking about it in a moment, but generally it's quite good, but there are always ways to get to the full database as long as you are in the single marketing cloud account. Another way of another purpose for creating the business units is the separation of the data. So not only subscribers as in all subscribers, but also separation of the data views data, about the data extensions data, about all the things that you store in the marketing cloud for the purposes of your marketing communication. This is also a great reason to create separate business unit, but just the same, it is also a bit limited. So your mileage may vary regarding whether it will be enough or not. Another reason for this for the business units is the separation of the content. So again, for example, if you have separate brands, or if you have separate countries, markets within one marketing cloud account, you might want to create business units to not mix various languages or various brandings in a single business unit. You can separate automations and journeys to make it just much cleaner and more obvious to everyone that, okay, this journey is specific to this specific brand, market, or however you will wish to split your business units. It's also related to the branding, as I mentioned. So all the names, all the logos will be separate on each business unit, and you can control it. You can separate configuration and have different configurations per business unit. And here, again, it is with the asterisk because there are parts of the configuration that are business unit specific. For example, seller profiles, where you can have a different seller profiles for each business unit. But there are also some configurations that are global. So they are shared across all the business units, like the profile attributes, like the contact deletion process. Those are managed from the parent business unit and impact every single business unit, and you can do nothing about it. And finally, there are some configuration elements that you can decide whether they will be local, business unit specific, or global. And in this case, you can decide it about the publication lists, about SAP. We'll be talking about it later. About Marketing Cloud Connect. Again, we'll be talking about it later. About installed packages. It will be your decision whether you want those configurations to be on the global level or on the business unit specific level. Another topic for the business unit and another example of the you decide configuration is separating the user permissions. So again, you can use only the global permissions that will be shared across all the business units, but in many cases, using the business unit specific permissions is the perfect way to secure and separate business units to make it more clear that, okay, for example, this user can only access these specific brand business units. And I see the first question, can we use shared folders to share all separated items about various business units? Yes, but it depends, meaning that for data extensions, sure, there is shared data extensions that you can leverage to share across the business units. For the content, yes, there is shared folder and you can use it for sharing the content. But for example, you cannot share automation folders, journey folders. So Data extensions, content, yes. Other elements of the marketing cloud, not really, but again, there are some exceptions, like for example, publication lists. You cannot share the folder, but you can create shared publication lists. So it depends on a specific case, actually. If a parent has a child, which also has a child, will the parent be called grandparent? Not really, because that, of course, you can call it like this, but the main differentiator between the parent and child is that the real parent, so the top level business unit, has some specific features. So, for example, only on parent you can configure the contact deletion. Only on parent you can configure profile attributes. So if you have the child that is a child, the parent of this lowest level child will not have these special powers. So only the top level is the very special magical business unit that needs a very specific name to be sure where something is happening. Next part, separating apps and integration. Again, it's something that is a bit related to how you choose it, but depending on how you install an install package, depending on how you create the integration, you can make it business unit specific or global. So deciding how your business units will be configured will have impact on this. Finally, going with the business units allows you to help with the securing platform, because using all the above that I mentioned in terms of the business unit purpose is a way to implement this lowest needed level of permissions to limit the access to the marketing cloud to only those specific elements that are truly needed for specific users. So with the mix of business that limit the brand and the country, with all the user permissions, with the configurations, you can control how small part of access this user has to make sure they have access only to what is truly needed for them to secure your data, your platform configuration. There are, however, three very important considerations when you are thinking about the business units, because based on those purpose, it might sound that, okay, let's jump and create as many business units as possible to create a very, very granular configuration of your business, of your marketing cloud. But there are three very important considerations here. And the first one is probably the most obvious one, cost. The business units cost you money in terms of the up on the license. So if you go overboard, it can quite quickly become a very, very big invoice. In many cases, it's worth it because of all those reasons that I stated just before. But this is a good reason to think whether you truly, truly need this business unit, or is it just nice to have. Another thing is that while business units allow you separation, it is limited separation, because again, for example, you cannot completely separate subscribers, while there is solution on the business unit configuration level that you can filter filter subscribers per business unit based on the profile attribute. You can still access them through SQL, through SSJS and AIM script. There are ways to get it. You can make it hard, you can make it complicated, you can obfuscate access to the full data. But if someone knows what to do, they will be able to get to to the parent data, especially. And this is especially problematic because the parent, in many cases, has the data for many business units. Like all subscribers list on the parent will contain subscribers from every single child. So the consideration here is that if you need 100% limit separation of the data, like without any exceptions, business units will not be enough. You will need a separate marketing cloud account, just like separate marketing cloud. And final consideration is that this is the limited integration. So we already mentioned that, okay, you cannot fully separate the data between the business units, but you also cannot fully integrate the data. And this goes back to what Lakshmi was asking. So while you can use shared data extensions, shared content, shared publication lists, you cannot have shared automations, you cannot have shared journeys. So those business units are not fully integrated. So there are some use cases where you, for example, cannot create easily journey builder template and roll it out across all the business units using some kind of shared folder. There are workarounds like a package manager, but again, it's workarounds. And I see the question from Antim. Yes, every subscriber that is added on any child automatically becomes part of the parent business unit, because the parent business unit, and it is one of those special parent powers, has control over the real all subscribers list. So the all subscribers list is just one on the parent business unit. Depending on how you configure the marketing cloud, either every single child business unit has access to the full list, or you can create a filter that limits the visible part of this all subscribers list. But in the end, there is one all subscribers list and parent can see it all. Okay, we talked about the purpose and considerations. Okay, I see another question. Can we configure two parents in a single enterprise? No, this is not possible. Only one parent per account. If you want two parents, you need two marketing clouds. And let's jump then to the business unit setup patterns. I think it will also answer a bit of the questions. So there are few different approaches how you can think about leveraging business units, and one that I do not recommend really. So let's jump into the details. So the most obvious one is you have just a single business unit, only the parent. If you are a smaller company, you can have everything in one place. It's easy. You don't have to worry about anything that we'll be talking today. To be honest, apart from the deliverability, it's simple. It's fine. However, I highly recommend going with a bit more complex one, where we have a at least separate business unit for the dev and test and learning, because while you can do it on the parent business unit, the same as the production things, it's much cleaner and much safer to have a bit different configuration for the test environment, for the learning environment, where new people are coming in and just trying to do things, and you don't want those tests to go to your production database. So this is a really good step up, and I highly recommend going with the separate dev test learning business unit. The next pattern is going even a step further, and I think that for smaller companies, this is the golden approach. It is a bit more complicated, but it is the most secure and most scalable configuration you can have for a small company. And it is to make the parent business unit only the administrative business unit. So there will be no real sense, there will be no production. It will be used only to manage the data and control other environments, other business units within the marketing cloud. Have a child for the real production sense from your marketing cloud, and then have a child for the dev test learning. And the reason for going with this different approach is that, again, the parent business unit has some special powers, and it is better to limit it only to the administrators, to the people that are the best in marketing cloud in your company, and have a bit more limited child business unit used for the production sense, because then you can control exactly what is available for all marketers on your business unit. It is just much easier. And what is more, you can also then very easily scale your configuration, because if you have production on the parent and want to add yet another business unit, you will have the mix of the production on the parent and the child, and the parent production will see the subscribers from the child. On the other hand, if we go with this third approach, you can add as many childs later on when it's needed, and there is no problem with it. I see two questions. So can we maintain multiple parent, multi-child business units under one MID? No, there's only one parent per one marketing cloud, and you can have multiple childs, or those childs can have more childs. But again, there's only one parent in one marketing cloud account. And yes, parent MID also called AID, will be different than the child MID. Each business unit has a completely separate ID. So every single one will have a different one. Going back to the patterns, I mentioned that this third pattern is really good because it makes it much easier to scale. And here you can see this example of how it can be scaled. So you will also see that there are many child brand specific, or it can be market specific, or whatever you want specific business units, and you can scale it as much as you want. And going back to what I was mentioning earlier, I wouldn't recommend going with this configuration where you have one brand or one market, or generally one production on the parent and another one on the child, because it will be problematic for separation of the data, for controlling those accounts, and migration of the already existing, already production ready marketing cloud business unit is quite hard. So truly, firstly, invest in one dirty business unit for the dev test learning. And secondly, if only you have at least a smallest chance of going to scale, go with this third approach where you have the production on the child, not on the parent. This is really something that I highly recommend. And this is the core patterns that are possible in the marketing cloud. Again, depending on your specific company, you can leverage it in many ways. So it can be that you just have one production for your whole company as a one child. That's perfectly fine. But you can also have, for example, use case where your company has multiple brands and each brand has different markets. So you can think about it like, for example, okay, let's create a childs per brand, and then those brand childs will have childs per each market. It's perfectly possible. It's just a matter of what level of granularity will create benefit for your company and will not make it too hard for your administrators to work on this solution. If you want to learn more about the business units, there is a great article by the Salesforce Architects blogs on Medium. So I highly recommend reading it if you want to go even a bit deeper in it. And as the time is ticking, we will now jump to the single org versus multi-org topic. And let's jump with the basics. So the single org versus multi-org decision is related to the Marketing Cloud Connect. So to the native integration between the Marketing Cloud and the Salesforce CRM. If you are not planning this integration, this topic will not be of much interest to you. However, if you are planning this integration, or if you have this integration and think about making changes, it will be really, really important. So Marketing Cloud Connect is a native integration between the CRM and the Marketing Cloud. It is absolutely awesome because it integrates outside of API limits. So you don't have to worry that your integration will burn down the API limits of either of the platforms. Plus, it provides quite a lot of out-of-the-box features that makes the talking between the clouds much easier. By default, it is set in the single org configuration. So this is the default baseline that connects one CRM org to the one Marketing Cloud org/account. And you are able to change to the multi-org configuration for free, just asking the support. But the key thing here is you cannot reverse this decision. So when you have that default single org, you can change to multi-org whenever you want. But once you go multi-org, there is no going back. You would need to have a new Marketing Cloud account created to have the single org again. So the decision whether you will go with the multi-org is very, very strategically important. So let's talk about basics of the single org. Single org integrates all Marketing Cloud business units with a single SF CRM. It means that it doesn't matter whether you have one business unit or 50 business units or 100 business units, single org will cover it all. And with one single configuration of the integration, everything will be connected and integrated. Multi-org is a bit different. Multi-org integrates each Marketing Cloud business unit with a separate marketing cloud, Salesforce CRM. You can integrate up to 5 business units to a single SF CRM. And you can see that there is asterisk, and this asterisk is because while you can integrate more than 5 because it is not a hard limit, there will be huge performance issues if you go above this limit. So Salesforce themselves recommend of going with more than 5 business units per single SF CRM org in the multi-org connector. And this is really huge limitation that will have enormous impact on the patterns that you can or cannot implement if you want to have a nicely working integration. And we'll jump to it in a moment. Finally, you don't have to integrate all business units. You can, of course, but if you feel like, okay, this business unit doesn't need integration because, for example, there is no CRM for it, or it is just a testing and you don't want to test things related to the CRM, it's perfectly fine. Multi-org enables you to connect every business unit, but it doesn't require you to connect all. And I see the question from Narendra. I will leave it for a moment because in a second we'll be showing all the patterns and I will be exactly answering this question with the diagrams to let you know what are the possible workarounds. Okay, let's jump for the considerations for now. So when you are thinking about the single org, the main consideration is that you cannot connect more than one SF org. So whether it will be the production, SF, CRM, sandbox, dev, no option, only one single CRM. You can change the CRM that is connected by disconnecting the one and connecting another one. But this will, of course, impact whole integration, all flows. It will be quite a complex process to change it, but it's possible. But you cannot connect 2 things at the same time in the single org. Secondly, the good thing about the single org is that you can control whether the child business units see the synchronized data extensions, but you cannot control whether parent business unit will see the synchronized data extensions. The parent will always see the synchronized data extensions, so the special data extensions that are copies of the Salesforce CRM objects selected in the integration. And this is important, and one of the reasons why, going back to the business units, I recommend to have the parent as the administrative business unit, because then you don't have to worry about this limitation, because it will be visible on the administrative one, and you will have control whether childs see it or not. Final consideration for the single org is that all business units are integrated. So it means all, even if you have dev, test, learning business unit, it will also be integrated with the same integration, for example, to the production CRM. So this is important caveat. If you want to have test environment, you will have to worry about people trading there, testing there, whether they are not impacting your production CRM with their tests. So let's talk about the multi-org considerations. There will be a bit more because firstly, as I mentioned, you cannot go back to the single org. So when you make the decision, there is no going back. Second, you shouldn't connect one SF org to more than 5 business units. Then the synchronized data extensions, so the way you synchronized objects from Salesforce CRM are shared across a specific integration. So to make it a bit more clear, if you have one CRM org connected to, for example, 3 different business units, you cannot say that, okay, this business unit has this filter applied or synchronizes only this object, and another one, a different one. The configuration of the integration is per CRM, not per business unit. So this is very, very important. Again, the use case, you have a business unit for one brand, business unit for second brand. You cannot apply a filter that, okay, business unit one will get only 50% of the contacts from the CRM, and another will get 50% of the contacts for the CRM for a specific brand. It's short. Another thing, you cannot connect two Salesforce orgs to the same business unit. So there are some ideas like, okay, I will make this one or business unit connect to the production and the sandbox. No, it's not possible. You can connect two different business units to two different orgs, but you cannot connect two orgs to one business unit. I see the question from M regarding the single org versus multi-org. So you set it by talking to support. The default is the single org, but you can ask support to switch it to the multi-org. There is no like option in your setup configuration. It is something that needs to be done by the support because it's changing of the business rules in the bucket of the marketing cloud. Okay, coming back to the consideration, you cannot create multiple marketing cloud connect integrations per one SF org. So one Salesforce CRM org can have only one marketing cloud connect integration. You cannot connect, for example, one SF org with two marketing clouds or two single org accounts. You have very limited control over synchronized data extension visibility. So in single org, we were able to decide whether the child see or do not see the synchronized data extensions. In the multi-org, there is no such option. As long as the integration is implemented in the business unit, this business unit will see the synchronized data extensions selected for this integration, and you can do nothing about it. There are no permissions to hide it. The only option to hide synchronized data extensions on the multi-org is to completely block access to Contact Builder and Email Studio, which is a huge limitation in terms of possibility of seeing the data that is for different business units. And I see a question from Gaurav. I mean that moving from the single org to multi-org is free because the change itself is free. While, of course, if you want to have additional Salesforce production licenses, you need to pay for additional Salesforce licenses. But firstly, from the marketing cloud perspective, it is free. There is no like added cost that you want to go for the multi-org. And second, you do not have to connect paid Salesforce licenses. You can connect a free dev license. Well, you can even go to the Trailhead, start the CRM playground, and integrate this playground to the marketing cloud. So this is quite a fun way to either train on the integration or to create your dev test environment and, for example, have the dev test integrated to a free license. So this is free. Then there is the question about whether the org. Yeah, so one way of checking it is that if you have if you have integration already implemented in your marketing cloud, if it is visible everywhere, it is probably a single org. If it is visible only in one place, it is probably multi-org. But other than such ways, there is no like magical checkbox to see whether it is single or multi-org. You would have to go to the support and ask, hey, am I in the single org or multi-org? Coming back to the slide and multi-org consideration. The last one for now is the risk of having duplicate contacts. So because in the multi-org we'll be connecting to a different CRMs, and because the integration is using the contact ID or lead ID as a tool for creating a subscriber key, even if you have exactly the same contact in two different CRMs, like, for example, a sandbox, full copy sandbox, and the production one, those will be created in the marketing cloud as duplicates because the ID will be different. So you have to think about how to control things that you are integrating to not go overboard with the number of contacts in your platform. And finally, there is one consideration that is related to generally this integration, not specific to single org or multi-org. And that is that not only the contacts and leads are considered contacts in terms of the license in Marketing Cloud, but also users are considered contacts in terms of the license. So if you have a lot of users in your CRMs and you don't need them for anything in your Marketing Cloud, be sure to filter them out in the integration because they can bloat your license limits in terms of the contacts. Finally, the recommended by Salesforce option for the integration users that are used for connecting the Salesforce CRM and the Marketing Cloud are admins on both sides, on Marketing Cloud and on the CRM. I highly recommend going the same way. While you can create your own limited roles for those integration users, it is a lot of pain and ongoing pain. So unless you are forced to do it, I recommend going with the administrative approach for the peace of mind. Finally, there is really nice documentation page related to the FAQ on the multi-org. It's definitely a must read if you are thinking about whether to switch on or not the multi-org configuration, because there are a few more limitations of the multi-org that are a bit more specific. Like, for example, there will be no shared Salesforce data extensions. The custom subscription center preference center is recommended for the multi-org. So there are some other things that you also should consider, but the list is quite long. So I focused only on the most important ones and those that are in many cases not known that well when someone is thinking about the integration. So let's jump to the patterns. I think it will also answer quite a few questions that I saw in the chat. Alex, the contact license is counted for the whole Marketing Cloud account. So it's sum of all business units, all channels, users, contacts, leads integrated or on every single integration, and it's all treated as a contacts that are counted against the contact limit. Okay, patterns. So let's start with the super simple one, single org. We have one Marketing Cloud, business unit, one CRM, easy peasy. We can have multiple business units that are connected via a single org to the CRM, easy peasy, just a default single org, all business units are integrated. Then on the multi-org side, you can have the case where you have each business unit connected to a different org. This can be any mix of the production orgs, sandboxes, dev orgs, or business units that are not integrated. Up to you. Have fun with deciding what you want to integrate here. The next approach is going with the multi-org that is connecting multiple business units. So again, you can connect one Salesforce CRM to up to 5 business units. So you can think about, for example, okay, let's connect administrative and all the production business units, up to 5 total, to the CRM production, and the dev test business unit to the sandbox or dev environment of the Salesforce for integrated testing that does not impact the production data. This is very popular approach, to be honest, the one that you will see right now. Then I want to cover a few patterns that are not possible. So the first one, as I mentioned earlier, there is no option to connect 2 Salesforce CRMs to the same business unit. And it doesn't matter whether it will be 2 production ones or 1 production and 1 sandbox one. There is just no option. And similarly, there is also no option to connect 1 single Salesforce CRM to 2 separate marketing clouds with the native integration. This also does not possible technically. Another thing that is, okay, it is possible, but definitely not recommended, is to connect the Salesforce CRM in the multi-org scenario to more than 5 business units. You can do it. There is no hard limit. Quite quickly, you will see that the performance is dropping, the speed of integration is slowing down, and there will be happening errors that will just make your life miserable. So just don't go over 5 business units, to be honest. Finally, as there is a limitation that you can have only 1 Marketing Cloud Connect per Salesforce CRM, you cannot think that, okay, I will create two integrations on one CRM, and one will cover 3 business units, another one will cover 3 to go as a workaround for the limit of 5 business units. No, you can have only one integration per Salesforce CRM, so this will not work. Okay, this looks like quite a lot of limitations, and there was already a question related to what we can do if we have more than 5 business units. So let's jump to the workarounds. So the first workaround is that you can connect the Salesforce CRM to, for example, only the parent business unit, and then leverage Automation Studio, shared data extensions, and similar tools to move the data from the parent to any number of the business units on the Marketing Cloud side, not on this integration side. This is cool because from the integration point of view, there are just 2 integrations between those this business unit and CRM and this business unit and CRM. The rest is not integrated, but is getting the data through the Automation Studio. However, there is, of course, the limitation that not only it takes more time, because not only there is the 15 minutes integration time needed for moving the data from the CRM to the parent business unit, but also you need the time to move it from the parent to the child's, which is at least an hour for the automation. But also you are losing a lot of features, because while you can move the data, the AMP script for working with the CRM production or the journey builder activities for the integration will not be there on the child business units. So this is important caveat of this workaround. Another workaround is that instead of going with the multi-org, you are going with the single org and just connect the single not matching integration with the API. This is really cool approach where, for example, you have 20 business units and only one should be connected to something else, because you don't want the dev test to be integrated to production CRM. In this case, you can go with the single org, make a fake integration with the API. The test integration will not move much data, so the API should be fine. Of course, it is more complex because you need to code it, but it will let you have all your business units, production business units integrated cleanly to the production org. Then another option is to play with the merge org. This is the custom name. So generally think about it that you are not integrating multiple Salesforce CRMs to through the multi-org to the multiple business units, but rather you are connecting multiple CRMs to one special CRM that is only working as a middleware, connecting the data from all the other CRMs, and it is connected with as a single org to all business units. And you then just use the SQL and rules to decide which data should be visible on which business unit, etc. This is relatively nice solution. However, again, it will be costly because you will need additional SF license. You will have problems with the data because in the single org, there will be some kind of option to see the data of all those orgs. So yeah, there is no perfect solution if you have some edge case of your integration. The important thing here is that those are the base solutions, and while most of the projects, most of the implementations will be relatively simple with either a single org or straightforward multi-org, there are cases where this can get quite overboard. I can here go to the project that me and Fanny were together recently, where we had a quite interesting setup of orgs because we had 2 marketing clouds. One was in the single org configuration, second was on the multi-org configuration. And then each of those orgs were connected to the merge org, which was connected to, I think it was over 50 different CRMs. So we leveraged nearly every single pattern that we discussed here in this project. So the sky is the limit in terms of what can happen on the real life projects, but yeah, there are options to manage this. And there is also, of course, a nicely provided link to a nice article by the Salesforce architect blocks that also covers multiple things related to this patterns topic. And again, what is important is that, as you can see here, with all those limitations, patterns, and considerations related to the multi-org single org configuration, this nicely wraps back to the business unit configuration that we discussed earlier. So you should think about how you configure the business unit, already thinking about how it will impact your single org versus multi-org configuration, to make sure that you do not go overboard and create a problem for your perfect architecture of the marketing cloud. And then we have the SAP private domains APIs. I think this topic should go a bit faster because we'll be covering only the high level stuff. This is completely separate sessions to cover this in full detail. So in terms of the deliverability features in the marketing cloud, we have SAP, which is the standard authentication package, which is a fully fledged account branding tool with the private domain, dedicated IP, rep email management, and link image wrapping. This last part is very important because the link image wrapping is available only as a part of the SAP. You cannot get it separate. Private domains, which are also part of the SAP, can be bought separately to have, for example, more than one private domain. Dedicated IP, which is part of the SAP, can be bought separately to have more IPs. And then there is the SSL, which is the security protocol responsible for this S in the HTTPS that is absolutely must have for every link that you have or every domain that you have in your marketing cloud. And there are a few considerations when we are thinking about the deliverability features. You can have one SAP per business unit, or you can have one SAP for whole account, for whole tenant with all business units. Or you can even go with something quite crazy, which is one SAP across multiple marketing cloud accounts, as long as they are in a single stack. So when you log into the marketing cloud, you will be seeing this S4 or S16 in the link of your marketing cloud. This S is the stack number. So as long as the marketing clouds are in the single stack, you can share it across multiple accounts. But you cannot have multiple SAPs in one business unit, which wraps back to the business unit architecture. Because, for example, if you want to have completely separate branding in terms of links, in terms of link and image wrapping in a single business unit, it's not possible because you will not be able to have multiple link image wrapping in a single business unit. You will need to have separate business units to cover links and images. Another thing is that you can extend SAP with additional private domains and IPs. So you are not limited to the default one. You can get as many as you need. While the dedicated IP is part of the SAP and you can buy other ones, if you're a small sender, you can use the shared IP. The shared IP works like this, that instead of having your own IP, you are using the marketing cloud dedicated IP that is shared across multiple different companies. And this is possible only until you go over, if I remember correctly, 100,000 mails a month. When you go above it, you will automatically be forced to go to the dedicated IP. As what is default, I would say it a bit depends on how you purchase the marketing cloud. If you go with the straightforward approach where you get a new account and buy SAP, probably this will be the moment where you decide whether you want to use the shared IP or dedicated IP. So in most cases, the dedicated IP is the standard, because the shared IP is rather a workaround for people who are not able to warm up their dedicated IP. And to be honest, in most cases, as long as you can warm up your IP, I recommend going with the dedicated IP, because then you are in the control of the reputation of this IP that we'll be talking in a moment. And you cannot have you either have the shared or dedicated. You cannot have mix, and there is no other option. So you have one or the other, either shared IP or dedicated one. And as for the dedicated IPs, you can get one or rather start using one when you hit 100,000 emails a month. And when you hit about 2 million emails a day, you should think about more than one, or rather you should go with more than one. Anything in between is a bit more strategic decision on how you want to leverage the IPs than a must from the deliverability point of view. And again, just as a reminder, because this is a very important element, link/image wrapping is possible only with SAP. As for where to check whether you have shared or dedicated IP, I think you can check it when you are selecting the IP in the email configuration. But again, for sure, you can validate it with the support. And as for checking whether you have the SAP, this is relatively easy because you can create, for example, an email or a cloud page, put the image in there. And if the image link hosted on your marketing cloud has your branding, you have SAP. If it is generic marketing cloud link, it means you either don't have SAP or it is not implemented, configured for your platform. Okay. And finally, there are multiple IP architectures possible. We'll be talking about it in a moment. So let's jump to the deliverability topic. And then important thing is that first thing when you're thinking about deliverability, so how well you can deliver your emails to the your recipients' inboxes, you are guilty until proven innocent, meaning that when you start with a new dedicated IP, all inbox providers are treating you as guilty, as potential spammer, and you need to build up your reputation to be able to send emails to everyone. IP reputation is key, and this is with asterisks because while IP reputation is key, for some email providers like Gmail or Comcast, the domain reputation is also important, but the IP one is key. If you have bad reputation IP, well, forget about getting out of spam. If you have good one, it will be much, much easier. There are a few more things that you need to worry about, but the IP one is one of the most important ones. Best practices are a must. This is important because something that, okay, my brand, my company is a huge known one, inboxes doesn't care. I mean, Gmail doesn't care whether you are one big or small one. They need to have the best practices and to show that you are a good user of the email deliverability part. Email providers are not equal, meaning that there is no single golden bullet for every email providers. There are slightly different rules for how to warm up. There are slightly different speeds in how we are getting the IP reputation. There are slightly different behaviors. For example, Microsoft is very interesting in terms of how you IP warm up because they tend to not show you whether you are doing good or bad for some time, and you have to guess whether you are not going overboard with your approach. So there is a lot to read. Regions are not equal. So just because something works, for example, in Europe or even more specific, a specific country doesn't mean it will work in a different region, because America, for example, the US is having completely different approach in terms of, for example, the bot databases. The US is buying databases all year round, which would be like Insta block list in Europe. And then you can have differences even within the Europe. Like, for example, each country can have, like, for example, either 90% people using the Gmail, which makes it much easier because you have one domain to worry about, or it can be very granular with 50 different email providers being split between people in the country. Then there is the markets are not equal, because even if you are focusing only on the specific country, B2C versus B2B will be completely different. The healthcare versus public will be something completely different, because they will be using different solutions. Example, public in many cases is completely blocking images and receiving text-only emails. On the other hand, healthcare in many cases, like UK, for example, have their own specific domain just for healthcare from the government, which is also yet another case. And then China is special, and I mean special. Everything you know about the deliverability will not be true for the China market. So you will need to, if you want to deliver in China, firstly think whether you can go with other tools like WeChat. And if you need to go with the email, prepare for a lot of fun, like really a lot of fun. Finally, there are both Marketing Cloud and third-party tools that can help you with all this process. In terms of the Marketing Cloud, apart from the standard reporting, like for example, you can use the reports or SQL or the Intelligence Report Advanced with the pivot tables to monitor how well your delivery is going, what are the percents on the delivery rates can help. But also there are third-party tools that can help you see how you are being delivered. And there's, for example, Inbox Monster that is natively integrated with the Marketing Cloud, but there are also other tools like Kickbox, like Everest, that have solutions that makes it much easier to understand what is happening with your deliverability. But again, this is just part of what's happening here, because there are many other factors that are important. Yeah, the IP reputation, domain reputation, sure, but then sender reputation, the metrics, the user engagement, content quality, the email code quality, the text version quality, subject lines that you are using, the block list and allow lists that you are on, are all important factors in how you are being delivered. And I saw there are a few questions in the chat. So in terms of how you can IP warm, it will be on the next slide, the last one, just as a heads up, as we are a bit over time. And as for the problems with delivering to Gmail, but to Outlook, but not to Gmail, it depends, because if you are warming up only, Gmail is easier than Outlook. If it is already older instance that is sending for some time, you either might have gotten on the blacklist, and it will be worth checking whether your IP or domain are on any blacklist. And on the other hand, there are tools by Microsoft where you can check via the postmaster what is the reputation of your sender as for the Microsoft. So this is definitely interesting. And finally, there are tools in the Marketing Cloud that you can request for, like the reputation audit, and there are a few more that you can check on my site. I will be sharing a link later on, where you can just ask and see what are potential problems that you can have with your deliverability. In terms of the IP warming, as it all goes back to the IP warming, the first thing that is important is that it can take around a month. It can take a bit shorter or longer, depending on the size of your database, depending on the market region and what you are doing, how you are building it. It is really important to read about the target that you want to hit, so the specific market region, the providers that you are targeting, and plan before you hit send, because again, if you do it wrong, you can just scrape and will have to restart your process, redo the IP warming to make sure that is growing correctly. The past engagement data is huge help. So if you can decide which contacts were opening and clicking your emails in the past on the previous IPs. It's super worth to separate them and use them as a starting segment for the first send, because the engagement with your first emails and lack of unsubscriptions from your first emails are incredibly important for the success of your IP warmup. I see one question regarding the how to wrap link and image. Generally, there is no demo. If you have it implemented, and if you add a link to email and send this email as a test to you, it should be wrapped automatically, by default in this wrapper. Same for image. If you upload image to the content builder, it should automatically have the wrapper if you have SAP configured. If it does not, if it shows the exact target, it is just not configured or not purchased. So there's no special way to click wrap it. It's by default happening when you have it implemented. Going back to IP warming, the clean database is a must. If you have zombie contacts, or even worse, if you have contacts that doesn't want to receive your emails, it is the very easy way to just murder your IP and go to start everything from scratch. So clean the database before IP warmup is a must-have to start. If you can, go with the good content. If you can provide some kind of, for example, voucher code or a very sexy white paper, it is absolutely good way. Generally, what you want in the IP warmup, you want no unsubscribes and as many opens and clicks as possible, because this engagement is informing the inbox provider, the email provider like Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, that people want to receive your emails. So Outlook should deliver those emails to people, not put it in the spam or block. IP architecture plays a big role here, because as I mentioned on the previous slide, you can decide how many IPs you have. And for example, the case where you use 3 IPs in a shared pool will potentially speed up your IP warmup. But on the other hand, if you don't hit the minimal limits for the number of sends, it can also block your IP warmup, because you will not have enough sends to keep it warm. So it is very important to think about how many IPs you need and how you want to connect. There will be one more thing about it, because next thing is the consistency is key. And again, even if you make absolutely best IP warming, but then because of the lack of content, because of the lack of segment, you will not be sending anything for the next month. You are back to step 0 and you can start from scratch. So you need to think about the IP warmup as a ramp that gets you to the place where you want to be, and then you need to go with this level that you want on consistent level. As for the simple sense for IP warming, yes, you could use both transactional and promotional. It's more about whether you can control the amount of sends, because the transactional sends in many cases are quite fun way of making IP warmup, or at least part of IP warmup, because many people are opening the transactional email, so they are getting engagement. But it might be hard for you to control how many transactional emails are going out, and if there are too much, it will be treated as a spammy behavior for a fresh new IP. So you need to balance and think about whether you can, for example, move only one transactional process for the beginning and then add new ones. As for whether it will be a simple sense or journey, it's up to you. Generally, it's more about which approach is with better potential for getting people to engage. And you always need to monitor and react, because there is, again, no golden bullet for IP warming. There can be some issues, like, for example, someone will have a bad day on your recipient database and will click unsubscribe on the very first day, which will be a setback. So you always need to monitor day to day how are the deliverability rate and bounces showing, and react with the segments and the volumes that you plan for the next day. So this first month of IP warm-up is very hot period, meaning that you will really have to focus and think about what you are sending from day to day. IP warm-up is not once and done. You will have to redo it in the future. So for example, if you add a new IP or new domain, you will need to redo IP warm-up. Not full for everyone, but we'll have to take care of this new IP, new domain. If you have a huge volume spike, because for example, you acquired another company and you have new 50% of your database coming in, you will need to do IP warm-up to this new level of the volume you are sending. If you are adding a new market, like for example, new country, you will need to probably do IP warm-up depending on what domains are used in this country. Because if those domains are the same as you have already in your database, like Gmail, no problem, probably not a need. If you are using a completely new domain specific to this specific country, this will be much harder. As for the question and Zoom, I will be showing it on the next slide in a few seconds. Final part on this slide is start small and take your time. Unless there is a very, very, very important reason to make it as fast as possible, I recommend taking a steady pace, because if you go too fast, you will have to restart everything, and it will take even more time if you versus what it would take if you started cleanly from the very beginning. And again, this might connect to the business unit architecture, because, for example, if you have specific business units with the different domains, because the business units are per market or per brand, it might create a need for a separate branding, SAP IPs, which will impact how you want to warm up your IPs. The SAP selection will depend highly on the business unit architecture, whether you want to SAP per business unit or for all business units. So again, it is very, very connected. And one important thing, if you want to learn as much as possible about the deliverability and all the gotchas around the IP warming, I highly recommend to follow all Iverson and Chad as White, because they are creating absolutely awesome content about all the nitty-gritty of working on the IPs and the specific details for each inbox. So for example, coming back to one of the questions earlier, all Iverson has few awesome guides on how to deal with the Microsoft step-by-step, what you can do to win the heart of the Microsoft and get delivered correctly. And now going to this last slide, IP warming. So this is probably the answer to many questions. There are generally two approaches. One is the simple one, which just makes it, okay, let's send 50,000 for a day for the first week, double for the next week, double for the next week, and go until you hit your target volume that you are planning. This is simple, but in most cases, this is not perfect. It depends on your audience, because, for example, if your audience is very granular, you have many different domains, this approach is perfectly fine. However, if, for example, in your audience, you have 90% of Gmail, if you start hitting Gmail with 50,000 emails a day from the very get-go, it will be asking for a problem. So if you want to do it in an optimal way, not the simple way, split audience by the domain, by the email provider. So it is important to consider all domains per email provider. Again, Microsoft has few different domains, Yahoo has few different domains. So there are pages internet where you can see which domains are related to which provider that can help with deciding this split. Split audience by past engagement to be able to focus on the most active audience, especially for the first sends, to build up this momentum for your IP warm-up. Prepare engaging content for at least 2 weeks ahead, so that you don't have to worry whether your marketing team, your content team, or email dev team will prepare something. Have the backlog of emails that you can send that will be engaging and interesting for your users. Prepare slower ramp-ups for each email provider, starting with the most engaged contacts. So again, honestly, if you can, I would start with something between 2,000 and 5,000 cents a day per domain. If you can start with 2,000, it's probably better. 5,000 in most cases will probably still be fine. Again, it's heavily dependent on the email provider. So if you can go with this one day more and start with 2,000, I probably would be doing it. And I was doing it in the past when I was responsible for IP warming of one of the global pharma companies. Pre-register with the help of Marketing Cloud Deliverability services. This means that if you plan to start sending with the new IP, you can, through the support ticket, ask for the help of the deliverability services of the Marketing Cloud, and they might help you pre-register to few key providers, like, again, Microsoft. This is not the final solution, meaning that the pre-registration is not solving all the problems. It's just helping you. If you do everything else better, it will be easier and more smooth sailing for you. But it is not like a get out of jail for using bad practices, but it can help. So it's worth doing when you are starting with the new IP. Start your IP warm-up only when you plan to keep engagement. So it goes back to what I was saying. If after the IP warm-up you don't have campaigns already planned, don't do it. Just wait with the IP warm-up when you have already the marketing plan for sends. So there is no block or rather period where you are not sending anything, because the whole IP warming, the purpose is to warm your IP, but your IP reputation is disappearing in time, meaning that if you are not sending, after sometimes around 30, 60 days, it will just be treated as a new fresh IP by the inbox providers. And Anjum, Priyanka, pre-register. For some inbox providers like Microsoft, the support can contact Marketing Cloud Deliverability services that can help you pre-register your company as a sender, so that Microsoft expects that you will be IP warming your new IP, and it can slightly help with your ramp up. It won't solve all the problems, but it can help Microsoft to understand that you are a new, known, fresh user that they should treat a bit more lenient in terms of the volumes. So it might be useful, but again, it won't solve all the problems if you have bad practices in other places. So there is no like golden ticket. And the last part here is to always monitor results for each provider on daily basis and adapt next day sends. So even if you plan this okay, this day will be 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, and you plan all these ramp-ups day by day, don't go with it with the blind eye. Always monitor whether the previous day went right or not. If it went right, there was really nice deliverability, sure, let's make it a bigger. However, if there was a bigger number of bounces, step back, keep the lower amount for example, 2 more days, wait until it gets delivered, and only then ramp up further. And this ends the slides for today, finally, a bit later than I planned, sorry. And I already see there was a question from Anjum regarding what kind of emails. Generally, it really doesn't matter what exactly those emails be. Just think for your specific audience, what will be the most engaging emails. So sending an email that, hey, please buy our product, probably will not be engaging. Sending an email about interesting white paper, telling about the newest things in the specific niche, or the voucher for the loyalty, might get much better engagement, and this is something that you might want to start on the early days of the IP warm-up. And then I also see a question from Antim. Can we send same email to same subscriber during IP warm-up period? Technically, you can do whatever you want. it's the question whether you will see engagement from the same email. So if you send the same email that the user already opened and clicked, probably this person won't do it twice. So you will get no engagement on the second time, which will be a signal to email provider that you are no longer interesting for your audience. So if you believe that sending the same email will be interesting, or for example, because the people didn't open the first send and you change the subject line and want to try once more, yeah, sure. But just always think with this end goal. You want user to engage, and whether this email content, this approach to sending will trigger the engagement. If yes, it's perfect. If no, think about something else. If we have less contacts, like only 20,000. So the question is, with 20,000 contacts, how many emails are you sending monthly? Because if you have 20,000, you might not be hitting the 100,000 emails per month. And if this is the case, you probably should go with the shared IP, because you will not be able to build up the reputation for the dedicated IP with such a small volume of sends. But if you are sending to these 20,000, for example, every 3 days, and you have 200,000 emails sent a month, then yeah, you can think about the warm-up. But well, it would be interesting to see an audience that is able to get as many emails. So again, the key thing is not the size of the database. The key thing is the amount of emails per month. Because even you have like 1 million database, if you are sending 50,000 emails a month, because you are sending it only on a very special occasions, you can still be the candidate for the shared IPs, not the dedicated IPs, because under some limit, the IP reputation will just not stick and you will be forever in the IP warm-up phase. And shared IPs is the solution for it. Or if you don't want to go for the shared IP with random people in the marketing cloud, you can find other people, for example, in the similar niche on the same marketing cloud stack as you, and share configuration, share IP with them. So you can also find a group that you want to share IP with, as long as they are in the same stack. Okay, just to follow up on the second question, Anjum, it depends. It's, again, every day is nice if you have enough to send, but if you do not have, again, enough in your database or enough content, it's better to send twice a week than to send emails that are not engaging. So I wouldn't go to less than twice a week, because you need to build this momentum, but it's better to send in not all days than to send something boring, not targeted on every single day. Send log. To be honest, I don't think send log itself will be super important here. I mean, of course, implement send log either way, but in this case, the most important part will be the bounce data view and the bounce reports, because the key thing is that the bounces will not only show you the deliverability rate, so how many emails are getting delivered to people, but also there will show you what are the reasons for the bounces. And especially in this IP warm-up phase, the messages from the SMTP in the bounce data view are in many cases telling you exactly what's the case. Okay, if there are no more questions, I think that's all for today.
Thank you, Mateusz. Okay, let me share my screen. Yeah, so it's time for quiz, guys. So just gonna stop the